Wyoming Territory, 1887. Hannah Merrick stumbled barefoot through the dust with 3 starving boys clinging to her skirt, chased not by wolves or winter, but by her own town. Doors slammed in her face. A pastor turned her away, and the sheriff read the paper that erased her home like it never existed. By sundown, she was just a widow with nothing left. No food, no shelter, no mercy, and 3 boys she refused to lose. She whispered to herself, voice breaking, "God, don't let them take my children too." Then the drunks came. Then the hands grabbing her. Then the world closing in, until a shadow on horseback stepped between her and hell itself. Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Ash Hollow, Wyoming Territory, 1886. Hannah Merrick tightened her grip on the wagon's reins, her fingers raw from cold and worry. Her 3 boys trailed behind her, Eli stiff with anger, Jonah trying to act brave, and little Caleb clinging to her skirt like it might disappear if he let go. They didn't make it far down Main Street before the stairs began. "Lord, save us," one woman whispered, stepping back as if sorrow were contagious. "That Merrick woman again," a man muttered. "Her man's dead. Her place is gone. Why ain't she leaving like folks do?" Hannah kept walking. Bare feet of shame pressed against her spine, step by step. She stopped at a painted blue door, the 21st she'd knocked on today. A thin-faced woman opened it, eyes already shaking her head. "No, Hannah," she said, voice tight. "We can't take in 4. My husband says, well, he says widows bring trouble." The door closed before Hannah could answer. Eli bristled beside her. "Let me talk to him, Ma." "No." Hannah guided him forward. "Talking ain't what they're scared of." They reached another house, 22. A man peeked out, arms folded, blocking the doorway. "We ain't got room," he barked. "You didn't even let her ask," Eli snapped. The man glared. "Boy, don't you raise your voice at me. Go sleep in your wagon like the rest of the nobodies." Eli lunged, but Hannah caught his arm. "Don't," she whispered. "Please." Jonah tried to lighten the air. "Maybe door 23 is lucky, Ma." But 23 wasn't lucky. The old widow who answered stared at Hannah with thin-lipped pity. "I'd help if I could," she said, "but folks are saying the Merricks carry misfortune. I got grandbabies to think about." The door clicked shut. Caleb's breath hitched. "Ma, are we bad people?" Hannah knelt, brushing the boy's cheek. "No, sweetheart. Folks are just scared of what they don't understand." But her own voice shook. God help her, it shook. They reached the church at the end of the street, its bell tower rising like a promise she prayed would hold. Hannah pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Reverend Wright?" she called. The Reverend appeared from the back, smoothing his vest. His eyes softened when he saw the children, but hardened when he saw the wagon outside. "Hannah, I can't let you stay here. Just one night," she begged. "The boys—" "It'll cause talk. You know how Briggs and the council get. If I let you stay, they'll say I'm encouraging vagrancy. Hannah swallowed the hurt until it tasted like iron. Is charity now called vagrancy? Hannah, please don't make this harder. I'm sorry. He closed the church door gently, like mercy. It felt like a slap all the same. By the time they stepped back into the dusk, the temperature had fallen, and so had Hannah's strength. Shadows stretched like long fingers across Main Street. Lamps flickered to life one by one, lighting their walk of shame. Then Sheriff Dale Crowley rode toward them, dust swirling around his horse's hooves. Hannah! He tipped his hat, but guilt sat heavy in his eyes. Got papers from Mr. Briggs. He slid a folded document toward her. By order of the county, your homestead is now the property of Ash Hollow Bank. You and yours gotta vacate town limits by nightfall. Hannah stared at the paper without taking it. We already been run out of our home, Sheriff. You gonna run us out of the town, too? Crowley shifted in his saddle. Ain't personal. It's the law. Eli stepped forward. Your law's crooked. Son, Crowley warned, best you mind your tongue. It's all right, Hannah whispered to Eli, pulling him back. We're going. A few townsfolk paused in the street, watching the spectacle. Some frowned. Some whispered. None stepped forward. The Merrick family walked past them like ghosts already forgotten. At the edge of town, the sheriff stopped his horse and looked away. You crossed that line, Hannah. You ain't allowed back till the council says otherwise. She lifted her chin. It was all she had left. I understand. She didn't look back as she stepped across the boundary. Eli kicked a rock into the dust behind him. Jonah held Caleb's hand. Caleb didn't cry. Not anymore. He'd run out of tears somewhere around door number 17. The sun dropped lower, bleeding red across the plains. The wagon creaked under the weight of everything they had left. A bedroll, a kettle, and a prayer hanging by its last thread. Hannah forced a breath into her lungs. Come on, boys, she said softly. We'll find a way. But the truth whispered in her chest, cold and merciless. There ain't nowhere left to go. Night settled over the plains like a worn blanket, full of holes that let the cold crawl through. Hannah urged her boys along the narrow road leading away from Ash Hollow. Their wagon creaked behind them, a lonely sound in the dark. Eli walked ahead, fists balled tight. Jonah kept glancing around as if trying to spot something good in a world that had stopped offering it. Caleb clung to Hannah's skirt, stumbling to match her pace. We'll stop once we reach the creek, Hannah murmured. There's brush enough to block the wind. Eli kicked a stone so hard it skittered across the dirt. We shouldn't have left, Ma. I could have... No. She pulled him close. You can't fight a whole town. I'd try, he muttered. But the boy didn't get a chance. Voices drifted toward them, slurred, rowdy, the kind that crawled under a woman's skin before the men even appeared. Well, well, look what stumbled out of town. 3 drunken cowhands lurched from behind a stand of sagebrush. Their hats sat crooked. Their boots slid in the dust. The tallest one, red-eyed and mean, grinned at Hannah. "Evenin', Widow Merrick. Didn't know the road came with its own entertainment." Hannah's heart thudded. She pulled her boys behind her. "We're just passing through," she said quietly. "Let us go." The man laughed. "Don't you worry. We'll let you go after you give us something to warm the night." He reached for her sleeve. Eli jumped between them. "Get your hands off my mother!" The cowhand shoved him so hard, Eli hit the dirt, coughing. Caleb screamed. Jonah grabbed a rock like it was his last weapon on earth. The man lifted his boot to kick Eli again. A gunshot cracked the dark. Not at the man, not at the ground, but at the bottle in his hand. Glass exploded, whiskey sprang across his shirt. He yelped and stumbled back. "Next shot," a deep voice said. "Won't be at glass." All four Merricks turned. A tall man sat on a coal-black horse, his silhouette sharp against the rising moon. His coat was dusty, his hat pulled low, his posture steady as stone. Joshua Cole. Most folks called him that colored rancher up by Hidden Creek. Some called him Trouble. Others called him a ghost, because he never came to town unless he had to. Tonight, he'd come anyway. Josh dismounted without hurry. He holstered his revolver but kept his hand near it, like a man who'd lived too long to trust the quiet. The lead cowhand snarled, "This ain't your business, Cole." Josh stepped between him and the Merricks. "You touch that woman again," he said softly, "and you'll meet God faster than you planned." The other two cowhands exchanged a look. Fear, disbelief, something sour. The tall one spat at Josh's boots. "You think the sheriff'll care if we kill a colored man outside town?" Josh didn't blink. "Sheriff don't need to care. I got my own way of staying alive." The air sharpened, muscles tensed, hands hovered near guns. Then the tall cowhand broke first, backing away with a curse. "Come on, ain't worth our time." His friends followed, grumbling as they disappeared down the road. The silence that followed was heavy and trembling. Josh turned to Hannah. "You all right, ma'am?" Hannah nodded, but her hands were shaking. "Thank you," she managed. Eli staggered to his feet, brushing dust off his shirt. "I didn't need help," he snapped. Josh's brow lifted. "Looked a lot like you did." Eli flushed dark red. Jonah stepped in front of him like a shield. "Sir, thank you. Really." Josh knelt beside the boys. "Nobody ought to face men like that alone. Not you. Not your ma." He turned to Hannah then, his gaze steady but gentle. "Where you headed?" "Anywhere not here," Hannah whispered. Josh let that settle. He glanced at the sky, clouds thickening, wind shifting colder. "Storm's coming. You shouldn't be out here with young'uns." Hannah stiffened. "We'll manage." "No," Josh said plainly. "You won't." The words weren't unkind. They were simply true. He nodded toward the north ridge. "My ranch is a mile out. Barn's warm. Got spare blankets. You can stay the night. No one'll bother you there." Eli stepped forward, bristling again. "We're not charity." Josh met the boy's stare. "Didn't offer charity. I offered shelter. He turned back to his horse, preparing to mount. But Caleb's small voice broke the night. Mister, is it safe there? Josh paused, looked at the boy. Something softened in his features. Safer than the road, he said. Hannah's breath trembled. Pride told her to say no. Fear told her she had no right to trust a stranger. But the cold wind cut through her dress, and her boys huddled close, and something in Josh's quiet steadiness felt true. She nodded. All right, just one night. Josh mounted his horse and gestured. Follow me. The Merricks climbed onto their wagon, and the small procession moved through the night. One tired family and the lone black rancher who had stepped between them and harm. Hannah didn't know why he'd helped. Josh didn't know why he'd stopped. But the road toward Hidden Creek Ranch felt different than the one behind them. For the first time that day, it felt like going somewhere instead of being driven away. Hidden Creek Ranch sat quiet under the rising moon, its fence lines silvered by frost, its barns standing like dark guardians against the prairie wind. Josh Cole rode ahead, lantern swinging from his saddle horn. Behind him, the Merrick wagon creaked along the dirt path, each bump jarring Hannah's tired bones. Eli kept glancing at Josh's back like the man was a wolf, leading them into a den. Jonah looked everywhere at once, excitement and fear wrestling in his chest. Caleb curled against Hannah's side, too exhausted to do anything but breathe. Josh pulled up near the barn and dismounted. You can bring the wagon inside, he said. Wind's shifting north. Gonna get colder before dawn. Hannah hesitated. We don't want to trouble you more than... Ma'am, Josh interrupted gently. You got 3 boys half froze. Trouble's already here. He pushed open the heavy barn door. Warmth rolled out. Soft, hay-scented, blessed warmth. Jonah gasped. Ma, it's warm. Caleb's fingers tightened in Hannah's skirt, as if afraid the warmth might be a dream. Josh stepped aside. Go on. The Merricks entered, their shadows long against the lantern light. Inside, horses snorted softly in their stalls. A few chickens clucked from a corner pen. The place felt lived in, cared for, safe in a way the open road hadn't offered in a long time. Josh spread a thick layer of straw with his boot and laid a blanket over it. Ain't much, he said, but it's dry and warm. Hannah felt shame twist inside her, sleeping on another man's floor, another man she didn't know, didn't understand, a man half the town whispered about. But she looked at her boys, their faces softening for the first time all day, and the decision was made for her. Thank you, she whispered. Josh nodded once, like he didn't want her to feel the weight of gratitude too heavy. Eli stood rigid near the wagon, arms crossed. We could have slept outside. In this cold? Josh raised an eyebrow. Boy, you'd be dead by morning. I'm not a boy. Then stop acting like one. The words hung in the barn like a gunshot. Hannah stepped between them, heart hammering. Eli, please, just settle down. Eli backed off, but his eyes stayed locked on Josh, sharp and wounded. We don't need him, he muttered. We don't need nobody. Josh didn't answer. He simply moved toward a small shelf and pulled down a tin of biscuits. "Food's scarce," he said, "but you're welcome to some." Jonah brightened immediately. "Thank you, sir." Eli didn't touch a bite. Caleb ate slowly, watching Josh the whole time. Josh set out a small tin cup of water for each boy. "There's more in the pump outside if you need." Hannah noticed he wasn't eating. "You're not having any?" Josh shook his head. "Ate earlier. You and the boys need it more." She didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything at all. After the boys settled under the blanket, Josh lifted his lantern. "I'll be on the porch," he said. "If anything happens, holler." "You're not staying inside?" Hannah asked before she could stop herself. Josh paused. "It's better this way," he said quietly. "Folks talk enough as it is." A heavy understanding settled in Hannah's chest. Even here, even alone, Josh carried the weight of what others thought. The danger of being a black man offering shelter to a white woman. "I didn't mean," she began. He shook his head. "You ain't done wrong. I'm just being careful." He stepped out, boots crunching on the hard ground. The barn door clicked behind him. For a while, only the horse's breathing filled the air. Jonah curled up beside Caleb, both boys drifting into sleep. Eli lay awake, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the rafters. "Ma," he whispered finally, "why'd we trust him?" Hannah stroked his hair. "Because he didn't have to help us. But he did. He's still a stranger." "Yes, but he's the only one who didn't turn us away." Eli swallowed hard, trying to carry all his anger without letting it crush him. Hannah's heart cracked a little at how hard he was trying to be a man. She waited until her boys were asleep before she let her own breath tremble. Outside, footsteps approached. Then a soft knock on the barn door. "Hannah," Josh's voice came through, low and steady. "Storm's hitting earlier than I thought. If you need more blankets, they're on a hook by the window." She opened the door a crack. His lantern cast warm gold over his coat, his hat, his tired eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He tipped his chin in a small nod. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." And he walked back into the cold, choosing the porch as his bed, keeping distance to protect them, not himself. Hannah watched him a moment longer. He'd saved them once already tonight. But she couldn't shake the feeling he was running from something too. Ghosts she couldn't name yet. Hidden Creek Ranch was quiet again. But the world had shifted. For the first time in a long while, the Merricks were warm. And for reasons she didn't understand, Hannah felt safer with that man outside than she had felt with a locked door inside Ash Hollow. Morning came gray and bitter, the kind that bit through coats and hopes alike. Hannah woke to the sound of horses stamping outside the barn. Jonah stretched. Caleb blinked awake. Eli sat up tense like he'd slept with one eye open. Josh's voice carried through the crack of the barn door. "Mornin'. You all alive in there?" Hannah pushed the door open. He stood with steam curling off 2 tin mugs. "Coffee," he said, "for you, and warm milk for the boys." Jonah lit up. Caleb reached shyly for the cup. Eli didn't touch his. Hannah warmed her hands around the tin. You didn't have to. I did, Josh cut in gently. Nothing works around here if people stop helping each other. The words sounded true, but the look in his eyes said he didn't get much help his way. After they finished, Josh walked toward the barn gate. You ain't got a plan for today, he said. I can see that clear as fresh tracks. Hannah stiffened. We'll figure something. I know you will, but till then, you can stay here on one condition. Eli bristled instantly. Jonah grabbed his sleeve to keep him from exploding. Josh continued, steady and calm. You work. I pay in shelter and food. Boys help with chores. You help with mending, cooking, whatever needs doing. Hannah's cheeks warmed with a mixture of relief and humiliation. We don't want charity. Good, Josh said. I don't offer any. He said it plain, no pride, no pity, just truth. Hannah looked at her boys, dusty, hungry, exhausted. Caleb leaned into her hip. Jonah tried to stand tall. Eli glared at the ground, jaw clenched tight enough to break. We'll work, she finally said. All of us. Josh nodded once. All right then. Welcome to Hidden Creek. For now. But before any relief could settle, the sound of hooves thundered down the trail. 4 riders. Dust rising. At the front, Colton Briggs, coat pressed, boots polished, expression smug as sin. Sheriff Crowley trailed behind him, hat low over guilty eyes. Hannah's breath stopped cold. Josh stepped forward, jaw tight. You're on my land, Briggs. Briggs smiled like a man admiring his own reflection. Just performing a civic duty. Heard you were harboring squatters. He looked at Hannah like she was trash dumped on his doorstep. Mrs. Merrick, he said silkily. You didn't last long out there, did you? Josh moved slightly, enough to block half of Briggs's view. Say your piece and leave. Briggs swung down from his horse, waving a folded paper like a weapon. I brought something for the widow. He extended it toward Hannah. She didn't take it. He kept holding it, grin stretching. Go on. Read it. Josh's hand twitched near his gun. If you've come to intimidate a woman, Briggs laughed. Intimidate? Why, this is pure kindness. He finally tossed the paper onto the wagon. It fluttered open across a crate. Eli grabbed it first. His face twisted. Ma, it's Pa's name. Hannah's knees weakened. She took the paper with trembling fingers. Her eyes scanned the lines. Alone. Large. Signed by Luke. Collateral. The house, the land, the livestock, the homestead. And Briggs's bank seal stamped bold at the bottom. No, she whispered. He'd never put our home at risk. Luke would never. Briggs clicked his tongue. Oh, he did, Mrs. Merrick. Walked right into my office and signed away everything you owned. Must have been desperate. Or stupid. Josh stepped beside her. Why show this now? Because, Briggs said, stepping close enough that Hannah smelled his peppermint breath. The town deserves to know she lost that homestead fair and square. No injustice, no mistakes, just a foolish husband and a widow who can't accept the consequences. Eli's face reddened. You liar! Pa wasn't foolish. Briggs smirked. If he wasn't, he wouldn't have died in railroad work meant for men with nothing to lose. The words hit Hannah like a rifle butt. Josh's voice dropped low. Dangerous. Briggs, leave. Now. Briggs raised his hands in mock surrender. Sheriff, you see how the colored man threatens me on his own land. Crowley looked sick. Colton, maybe you should... Quiet, Briggs snapped. I'm done here anyway. He swung back onto his horse. Oh, and Mrs. Merrick. He tipped his hat. Next time you curse my name, remember, it was your husband who signed your life away, not me. He spurred his horse and galloped off, his men following. Dust settled over the ranch like ash. Hannah stared at the paper in her hand. Her breath broke. Her jaw trembled. The world she'd been clinging to, Luke's memory, Luke's goodness, fractured in one silent crack. Josh stepped closer. Hannah, you didn't know. You couldn't have. She stepped back, eyes burning. You should have told me he went to Briggs. Josh froze. How long have you known? She whispered. His silence was an answer. Eli rounded on him. You knew Pa was tricked, and you didn't tell us? His voice cracked like something splitting open inside. Josh swallowed hard. I wasn't sure it was my place. It was our lives, Hannah said, voice small and breaking. Our home. Jonah's lip trembled. Caleb hid behind his mother's skirt. Josh removed his hat, shame weighing him. I can't take back what I didn't do, he said softly. But I can help you now. But Hannah couldn't hear him. Not yet. All she felt was betrayal layered on top of loss, grief tangled with anger, truth souring her memories of Luke, trust slipping through her fingers like cold sand. And Josh, solid, steady Josh, was suddenly another man who had stood aside while her world cracked. Hidden Creek Ranch felt less like refuge now, more like a crossroads, one that could save them or break them further. Evening pressed down on Hidden Creek Ranch, cold and heavy like judgment. The sky bruised purple. The wind cut sharper than it had any right to. Inside the barn, Hannah stood alone near the lantern, staring at Luke's signature on the loan paper until the numbers blurred. Her breath hitched in her chest. Every part of her felt hollow. Betrayal did that to a woman, hollowed her out from the inside. Footsteps tapped softly across the barn floor. Josh. He paused beside a hay bale, head bowed, hat in his hands. Hannah, he said gently, we need to talk. She didn't turn. Do we? Josh took that hit without flinching. Yes, ma'am. We do. The barn felt too small suddenly, too warm, too close to a truth she wasn't ready for. Hannah tightened her grip on the paper. How long have you known Luke got tangled up with Briggs? Josh hesitated. A heartbeat. Maybe two. Since the day he walked into that bank, he said quietly. Hannah's shoulders stiffened. Josh swallowed. He came by my place first, asked if I'd go with him, wanted a... He searched for the word. A witness. Someone he trusted. Hannah turned then, eyes shining with hurt. And you refused him? Josh met her gaze dead on. I did. The world spun a little. Hannah gripped the edge of a stall door just to stay upright. Why? She whispered. Josh's jaw tightened. Because I didn't want to step foot in Briggs's bank. I didn't want trouble with white folks' business. White folks' business? Hannah's voice cracked. My husband was drowning, and you closed the door on him because of pride? Fear? It ain't that simple, Josh murmured. It seems mighty simple from where I'm standin'. Josh's eyes flickered. Pain, regret, something darker. I've been burned before, Hannah. Stepped in where I wasn't wanted. Cost me a family that wasn't even mine to lose. Hannah froze. What are you talking about? Josh looked away, voice low, haunted. 5 years back, a colored family south of here asked me to stand up to a group of drunk minors giving 'em trouble. I showed up late. Too late. House was burnin'. Folks said the family caused their own trouble. No one was charged. And His voice shook. I've been carrying that. Silence. Raw. Cold. Deep. So when Luke asked, he continued, I told myself I wasn't getting pulled into somebody else's mess again. Told myself he'd handle it. Told myself it wasn't my place. Hannah felt something break. Not loud, not sharp. A quiet break, the kind that left a woman sinking slow. You were the one person he trusted enough to ask, she whispered, and you walked away. I regret it every day since, Josh said, especially now. Behind them, straw rustled softly as Jonah and Caleb slept in their makeshift bed. Eli, however, stood in the shadows by the ladder, eyes dark, fists shaking. You knew, Eli said, voice tight as a noose. And you let Pa walk in there alone. Josh closed his eyes. Eli, I'm sorry. Sorry? Eli stepped forward. Sorry's not going to bring back our house or Pa. Eli, Hannah warned softly, but the boy was past hearing. You let him get tricked, Eli shouted. You let him die. Josh flinched, just once, but it was enough. That's enough, Hannah said sharply. She pulled Eli into her side. The boy resisted, then collapsed against her, fury melting into grief. Hannah rubbed his back, but her own throat burned. When she looked back at Josh, her voice had softened, but not forgiven. You should have told me, she said. Not today, not like this, but before. I know, Josh murmured. Why didn't you? He looked down at his hands, those strong, steady hands that had hauled Eli out of danger, held lanterns, mended fences, lifted burdens without complaint. Because I didn't want you looking at me the way you're looking now. Hannah's chest tightened. And how's that? Like I'm the man who failed your family. The lantern flickered between them, throwing shadows across Josh's face, lines of sorrow carved deep. You didn't fail us, she whispered. You failed Luke. You failed yourself. And now, I don't know where that leaves us. Josh stepped back, giving her space she hadn't asked for but desperately needed. You don't owe me nothing, he said. But as long as you're on this ranch, I'll protect you and them boys. That's a promise I won't break again. He tipped his hat slightly, a gesture of respect, regret, and resignation all tangled together, and started toward the barn door. Josh, Hannah called softly. He stopped. Her voice trembled. I don't hate you, but I need time. Josh nodded once. That's fair. He stepped outside, letting the cold night swallow him whole. Inside the barn, Hannah sank to her knees beside the sleeping boys. Eli hid his face in her shoulder, his small body shaking. She held him tight, feeling the weight of a husband lost, a truth revealed, and a rancher who had tried to help but had still come too late. Everything between them had changed, and tomorrow would be worse. News in Ash Hollow traveled faster than a prairie fire in dry season. By sunrise, half the town already believed a story that wasn't true, and the other half didn't care whether it was or not. And every version of it involved Hannah Merrick and the colored rancher up on Hidden Creek. Josh had gone out early to fix a broken fence line. Hannah stayed behind with the boys, trying to scrub out the ache in her chest by tending to chores. But whispers drifted up the road long before she reached town. She had no choice. Flour was low, salt nearly gone, and 3 hungry boys didn't wait on heartbreak or shame. Hannah walked into the general store with her shoulders set. She knew better than to hope. Mrs. Green, the storekeeper's wife, eyed her from behind a stack of fabric bolts. Well, if it ain't the Merrick widow, she drawled. Heard you been keepin' company out there. Hannah kept her gaze steady. I'm buying flour. Uh-huh. Mrs. Green leaned closer. People say you traded beds for shelter. Guess some women move on quicker 'n others. Hannah froze. Several customers turned to stare. She steadied her breath. That's enough. Mrs. Green sniffed. Just sayin'. When a woman runs straight from one man's grave into another man's barn. A warm hand touched Hannah's arm. Rosa Alvarez. Rosa stepped between Hannah and the gossiping woman. Senora Green, she said calmly, you talk about my customers again. I'll toss you out the door myself. Mrs. Green scoffed, muttered something hateful, and stalked away. Rosa pulled Hannah aside, voice soft. You look tired. Feels like the whole town's aiming at me, Hannah whispered. Rosa nodded. They always aim at the easiest target. She slipped an extra loaf of bread into Hannah's bowl. On the house, don't argue. Hannah opened her mouth to protest, but Rosa shook her head. Chew a bit. That's enough. For a moment, Hannah's eyes stung. She swallowed the tears. She didn't dare let them fall. When she returned to the ranch, the boys were arguing. Jonah tried to hide it, but Caleb pointed at Eli. Eli said bad things, Caleb muttered. Hannah knelt. What things? Jonah hesitated, glancing at his brother. Eli stared at the ground, jaw tight, fists shoved deep into his pockets. Eli, Hannah said softly, look at me. He didn't. Look at me. The boy finally lifted his head, anger shining like a blade. I said, Eli muttered, voice rough, that you like having men around. Pa was barely cold, and now you got him. Hannah's breath caught. Eli, you sleep in his barn. You eat his food. You do everything he says. That's not true, she snapped. You don't see it now, Eli whispered, but everyone else does. Hannah's heart caved in on itself. Baby, I'm trying to keep you safe. That's all. Eli shook his head. No, you don't know how to be alone. The words cut deeper than any blade. Jonah stepped forward. Eli, stop! But Eli was already backing away, shaking, ashamed and furious all at once. Hannah reached for him, but he pulled free like touching her burned him. I can help, Eli said suddenly. I can earn my keep. Briggs said he'll give me real work. Hannah froze. Eli. No. He said men earn money, not charity. The boy's voice cracked. I'm tired of being useless. Tired of you looking at me like I'm just a kid you gotta drag along. I don't... But he was already moving toward the fence. Eli! Hannah grabbed his arm. We're leaving Briggs out of this. He's dangerous. You just don't want me to grow up, Eli yelled. His face crumpled. Anger, grief, fear all tangled together. And then he ran. Eli! Hannah shouted, but the wind swallowed her voice. She stumbled after him, but he was faster, legs long with fear and stubborn pride. Jonah tried to chase him. Hannah held him back. Caleb cried until he hiccuped. By the time they reached the end of the drive, Eli had vanished onto the road leading to Ash Hollow. Gone. Into Briggs's jaws. Hannah collapsed to her knees in the dirt. No! No, no, no! Her hands shook violently. Jonah hugged her. Caleb buried into her skirts. Josh rode up just then, rope dangling from his saddle, dust on his coat. He took in Hannah's pale face, the empty road, Jonah crying, Caleb shaking. Where's Eli? He asked. Hannah looked up at him, eyes hollow. He's gone, she whispered. Josh's breath left him in one hard exhale. Which way? Toward town. Josh's jaw clenched so tight a muscle twitched. Briggs. Hannah nodded, broken. Josh dismounted in one swift motion. I'll get him. No, Josh, he's angry. He won't listen. Then I'll talk louder, Josh said. But as he swung into the saddle again, Hannah grabbed his coat. Please, she whispered, voice shredded. Don't let him hate me when you bring him back. Josh looked down at her, something dark and protective rising behind his eyes. Hannah, he said, I'll bring your boy home. I swear it. He kicked his horse hard, riding straight toward Ash Hollow, toward danger, toward Briggs. The dust he left behind curled through the air like a warning. The storm between them had only begun. The sun was barely crawling over the ridge when Josh Cole rode into Ash Hollow. His jaw was locked tight. His hat was pulled low. Every hoofbeat sounded like a warning. He knew where Briggs kept the boys he used, behind the freight warehouse, where grown men worked hard and desperate men worked harder. Sure enough, he spotted Eli hauling a grain sack nearly as big as him. The boy's knees wobbled, his palms were scraped raw, but he kept going, stubborn as a mule that didn't know it was hurt. Josh slid off his horse without a sound. "Eli," he said quietly. The boy stiffened but didn't turn. "I'm busy." "Looks like it." Josh stepped closer. "Busy getting yourself killed." Eli spun around, anger flashing. "Least somebody here wants me." Josh didn't rise to it. "Your mama wants you. She wants a baby. I ain't that anymore." "You're 14, Josh said. "You ain't grown, and you sure as hell ain't safe here." Eli looked away, breathing hard. "Briggs said I can make real money. Help Ma, help Jonah and Caleb." "Briggs lies," Josh said simply. A voice drifted from the shadows. "Oh, now that's hurtful." Colton Briggs stepped forward, clean boots crunching on gravel, smile as polished as his silver pocket watch. He clapped a hand on Eli's shoulder, too familiar, too heavy. Eli flinched, but didn't step away. "Joshua," Briggs said, "you're off your property. That's gutsy for a man in your position." Josh didn't blink. "Let the boy go." Briggs tilted his head. "Why?" "He asked for work. I gave it. That's what respectable men do." Josh stepped closer. "You know damn well what you're doing." Briggs's smile widened. "Do I? Enlighten me." "You're using him," Josh said, "to get to her." Briggs leaned in, low voice dripping venom. "I don't need to get to a woman who's already halfway ruined herself." Josh's fist tightened. "Careful." Briggs ignored the warning, turning his attention to Eli. "You told me your mama cries at night," he said softly. "Says she can't take care of you boys." Eli looked crushed with shame. Josh stepped forward, but Briggs's men shifted slightly, a silent circle forming. Briggs straightened. "You want the truth, Joshua? I plan to file a petition with the judge. The law says children can be removed from an unfit home." Eli's face went white. Josh's fury rose slow and dangerous. "There ain't nothing unfit about that woman." "Oh?" Briggs asked. "A widow living on a colored man's ranch, sharing space, rumors of impropriety." He clicked his tongue. "I'd say that's quite unfit." Eli's breath shook. Briggs kept going, voice smooth. "The judge will listen when I bring testimony. People talk, you know. They love talking when it's about sin." Josh stepped closer, enough that Briggs finally stepped back. "You think you can take her boys," Josh said, voice steel. "But that ain't happening." Briggs chuckled. "What will you do? Shoot me? The law's on my side." Josh leaned down just enough that Briggs felt the heat in his stare. "You got money," Josh said. "You got friends. You got a sheriff who jumps when you whistle. But you don't have truth." Briggs's eye twitched. Josh turned to Eli. kneeling so they were eye to eye. "You listen to me, son," he said quietly. "Briggs ain't helping you. He ain't protecting you. He's using you." Eli's lip trembled. He said I could earn. He wants you tired. He wants you scared. So you'll believe whatever he tells you." Josh touched the boy's shoulder. "That ain't work. That ain't manhood. That's shackles." Eli shook his head hard, trying to fight tears. I just wanted to help." Josh's voice softened. "Then help by coming home. Your mama's scared sick." Briggs cut in, voice sharp. "This boy stays. He signed on. He's my employee now." "He's a child," Josh snapped. "He's a worker," Briggs countered. "And I'll see a judge confirm it before the week ends." Eli's breath hitched. Josh saw the fear take root. He also saw something else. Resolve. Eli straightened suddenly. His fists tightened. "You're a liar," he said to Briggs. "You said Mama was dirt. You said we were better off without her. You want me to turn against her." Briggs's face twitched. "Watch your mouth, boy." "No." Eli's voice cracked, but held strong. "I'm done listening to you." He took the crumpled paper Briggs had shoved in his pocket earlier, a fake work agreement, and tore it in half, then tore it again and again. The wind carried the scraps. Briggs lunged. "You little—" But Josh stepped forward, blocking the path completely. "Touch him," Josh said, "and you'll regret it." Briggs glared murder at them both, but fear flickered behind his rage. He snapped his fingers. His men stepped back. "This ain't over," he spat. "Not by a long shot." Josh placed a steady hand on Eli's back. "Let's go home." Eli nodded, swallowing tears he didn't want anyone to see. The boy walked beside him, shoulders shaking, pride broken, but heart beginning to heal. Behind them, Briggs stood in the alleyway, jaw clenched, plotting. And far above, the sky darkened, like the law itself was gathering strength for the strike that was coming next. They were halfway back to Hidden Creek when Eli froze, his breath catching in his throat. I can't face Ma yet," he whispered. Josh slowed his horse. "Ain't about facing her, it's about going home." But Eli's eyes darted over his shoulder. Fear, shame, guilt. A 14-year-old boy drowning in responsibilities he wasn't built to carry. Josh didn't push him, just said, "We'll take the long way. Give you time to breathe." They veered off the main road, cutting through low grass and rolling hills. The wind whistled through the sagebrush, sharp as broken glass. That's when Josh felt it. A shift in the air. He turned his head slightly, saw a flicker in the tall grass. "Eli," he murmured, "stay close." The boy blinked. "Why?" A shape rose from the grass, then another. Briggs's hired men. 2 of them, rifles in hand, grins stretched thin and cruel. "Well, looky here," one sneered. "Boss said bring the boy back. Didn't say nothing about the rancher." Josh stepped in front of Eli without thinking, voice low as a growl. "You boys don't want this fight." "Oh, we do." The second man lifted the butt of his rifle. He swung, hard. Josh shoved Eli out of the way and took the blow across his ribs. Pain lit up his side like fire. He staggered, but stayed upright. Eli screamed, "Stop!" The first man grabbed the boy by the collar. Josh lunged. Gunfire cracked across the plains. A bullet grazed Josh's side, ripping through his coat and skin. Blood blossomed warm against the cold wind. Josh didn't fall. He roared and rammed his shoulder into the gunman holding Eli, knocking the man off balance. Eli tumbled free, terrified but unharmed. The other man fired again, wide, shaking from Josh's sudden fury. Josh swung the stock of his Winchester, connecting with the man's jaw. Bone cracked like dry wood. The man dropped, out cold. The second man scrambled to his feet, clutching his shoulder. "Boss ain't done with you!" he shouted before limping into the grass and disappearing into the hills. Silence settled hard. Josh pressed his hand to his bleeding side. It was shallow, painful, but shallow. He stayed steady. Eli stared at him like he'd just watched the world tip off its axis. You got shot," Eli croaked. Josh wiped the blood with his thumb. "Just a scrape. You saved me again." Josh met the boy's eyes. "I told your mama I'd bring you home. Alive." Eli swallowed hard. I'm sorry for what I said. For running. For all of it." Josh put a heavy, warm hand on his shoulder. "We all make mistakes, boy. The thing that matters is where you stand after." A tear slipped down Eli's cheek. He wiped it fast, hoping Josh didn't see. Josh pretended not to. "Come on," Josh said gently. "Let's get you to your mother." Hidden Creek Ranch came into view just as dusk painted the sky gold. Jonah and Caleb were waiting on the shust porch, eyes wide the moment they saw silhouettes on the horizon. "Mama, it's them!" Hannah burst out the door, apron still on, heart in her throat. "Eli!" The boy slid off Josh's horse before it even stopped. Hannah dropped to her knees in the dirt and pulled him into her arms. Eli squeezed back so tight she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry, Ma," he whispered against her shoulder. "I ain't leaving again." Her tears hit his hair. "Don't you ever scare me like that." Josh looked away, giving them space, one hand pressed to his ribs to hide the blood. But Hannah saw it. "Oh God, Josh!" She sprang up. "You're hurt!" "Bullet just kissed me," he muttered, embarrassed. "I'll live." She stepped closer, brushing her fingers near the torn fabric, near the blood. He stiffened, breath catching. Not from pain, from how gently she touched him. "Come inside," she whispered. "I'll clean." Hoofbeats thundered down the drive. Hannah froze. Josh instinctively stepped in front of her and the boys. Sheriff Dale Crowley reined in hard, dust swirling around him. He didn't dismount, didn't even raise his head fully. He held a folded paper in his hand. His voice shook, not from fear, but from shame. "Hannah Merrick," he called. "I've come on behalf of Colton Briggs." Josh's hand went to his gun. Crowley flinched. "Don't, Josh. This ain't my choice." "What is it?" Hannah demanded, voice trembling but fierce. Crowley swallowed. It's a petition, he said, for the court to review the removal of your children on grounds of moral unfitness. Hannah's knees buckled. Josh caught her before she hit the ground. Eli grabbed the sheriff's boot. No, you can't. Crowley looked sick. I'm sorry, son. I'm so damn sorry. He placed the paper on the ground, turned his horse, and rode away. Dust swallowed him. Hannah stared at the document. Her voice was a ghost. They want to take my boys. Josh knelt beside her, ignoring the blood soaking his shirt. No, he said. They ain't takin' nothin'. His hand covered hers, steady and strong. Not while I'm breathin'. Behind them, the sky darkened, and the real war began. Night at Hidden Creek carried a kind of silence that didn't comfort. It weighed. It pressed on the walls, pressed on Hannah's chest, pressed on every fear she'd tried to outrun. The petition lay on the table like a loaded gun. Jonah and Caleb slept curled together. Eli sat near the hearth, arms wrapped around his knees, staring at nothing. Hannah paced the room until Rosa Alvarez arrived without knocking. Pack light, Rosa said. We can't talk here. Josh stepped from the porch shadows. You followed us. I follow trouble, Rosa answered, and trouble is following her. Hannah didn't argue. She didn't have the strength. Rosa led them through the dark to her cantina, shutters closed, lamps dimmed, the whole building breathing secrets. Inside, Muksu Amos Wright waited, hands clasped, eyes tired in a way that suggested he hadn't slept right in years. Josh stiffened. Preacher, what are you doing mixed up in this? Wright swallowed. Trying to make something right before I die. Hannah's heart thudded. What does that mean? Rosa locked the door behind them. Sit, listen, and prepare yourself. Hannah sat slowly, afraid of whatever truth they were about to spill. Rosa started first. My ex-husband, she said, worked rail repairs 2 seasons ago, close to where your Luke was assigned. Hannah's throat closed. Rosa rubbed her hands together. One night, he comes home shaking, says he heard Briggs talking to the foreman, said. She exhaled hard. Said Luke Merrick was too noble for his own good, that he asked too many questions. Hannah blinked. Questions? What questions? Shipment numbers, missing pay, safety rules being ignored, something about dynamite stored where it shouldn't be. Josh's brows knitted. Rail companies cut corners all the time. Rosa nodded. Exactly. And men who speak up disappear. Hannah gripped the table. Luke didn't disappear. He fell. They said he fell. Wright finally looked up, haunted, guilty. Mrs. Merrick, he said softly, that wasn't an accident. Hannah's entire body went cold. Don't. Wright pressed on, voice breaking. I heard Briggs, at a dinner for donors. He'd had too much brandy. He said, one less railman ain't nothin' if it gets me the land easier. Hannah's breath hitched. Land. Why would... He wanted the homestead, Josh whispered. Your west acres border the creek, prime grazing, prime rail access. Wright nodded miserably. Luke refused to sell. His death made the bank move faster on the loan paperwork. Briggs swooped in. Hannah shook her head violently. No, no, Luke was careful. He would never... He was, Rosa said gently, but he trusted the wrong men. Wright wiped his trembling hands on his coat. And I, God forgive me, I stayed silent. I didn't want Briggs cutting church funds. I told. Myself, I didn't know for sure. I told myself the widow would be better off left alone. Hannah stood so fast her chair scraped across the floor. You let me raise 3 boys without a father, she whispered. You let me cry myself sick thinking Luke slipped because he was tired. Her voice cracked. You let me believe he failed us. Wright bowed his head into his hands. I was a coward. Josh stepped closer to Hannah, but didn't touch her. You okay? No, she breathed. No, I'm not. She pressed her palms to her temples. He died for doing the right thing, and Briggs made it look like stupidity. Eli rose to his feet, fists shaking. Pa didn't die 'cause he was weak? Rosa knelt in front of him. No, mijo. He died because he was strong. Eli's eyes filled with tears. Relief and rage tangled together. Hannah staggered. Josh reached out, not to grab, just to anchor her if she chose him. She didn't lean into him, but she didn't pull away. What do we do? Hannah whispered. Rosa glanced at Josh. Wright did too. Josh drew a slow breath. We use it. Hannah frowned. Use? We take Briggs to court, Josh said. We testify. We lay out everything. What he did to Luke. What he tried with Eli. What he's doing to you. Wright swallowed. It'll cost me my position. Rosa smirked. Positions grow back. Consciences don't. Hannah felt the room tilt. Josh, she whispered, if we lose, they'll take my boys. We ain't losing, Josh said. His voice was steady iron. Not this time. I came too late for your husband. I ain't coming too late for you. Hannah's eyes softened, just for a second, but then the weight of everything crashed back in. We're fighting a man who owns half this town. Josh stepped forward. And you're fighting with a man who don't back down. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Fear, hope, something like trust rising slow from the ashes. Rosa opened the door a crack. Tomorrow, she said, we make our stand in daylight. Hannah nodded, though her knees felt like sand. Eli slipped his hand into hers. Mama, he whispered. Pa was brave. You gotta be brave too. She squeezed him hard enough that her hand trembled. I will. Outside, the night wind wailed across Ash Hollow, like old ghosts remembering injustice. And for the first time, Hannah understood. Luke hadn't died by chance. He'd been pushed, buried, erased. And she, widow, mother, outcast, was going to drag the truth into the light, even if it broke her. By the time the courthouse bell struck 10, Ash Hollow looked like a festival gone wrong. Wagons lined the street. Folks crowded the steps. Some came hungry for drama. Some came to watch Hannah Merrick lose her children. A few, very few, came hoping for justice. Inside, the air felt tight enough to choke a man. Hannah sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. Josh sat right behind her, back straight, eyes fixed on Briggs like a Moine memorizing an enemy's heartbeat. Eli, Jonah, and Caleb huddled together on the front bench, trying to look brave. The judge, Harper, old, stern, but not blind, rapped his gavel. "This court will come to order." Briggs rose with the confidence of a man who believed he owned the room. His lawyer, a slick fellow with slicker hair, stepped forward. "Your Honor," he began, "we come with a heavy heart. We are here only out of concern for the Merrick children. Their mother, tragically widowed, has fallen under the influence of a man known for violence." The lawyer nodded toward Josh. Joshua Cole, a colored rancher with a record of brawling and disregard for authority. A few townsfolk muttered. Someone snickered. Josh didn't blink. Hannah tightened her jaw. The lawyer continued, voice dripping pity. "These children live on his ranch. A widow and a man, unrelated, living under one roof, alone, unmarried. What kind of life is that for impressionable boys?" More whispers, more stares. Hannah felt her cheeks heat, not with shame but with anger that tasted like metal. The lawyer pressed harder. "And let us not forget," he said, flipping a paper dramatically, "that Mr. Cole recently assaulted employees of Mr. Briggs. Violent, unstable, dangerous." Josh leaned forward, voice low enough for Hannah alone. "Don't worry about me. Focus on you." She nodded once. Briggs stood, hands folded like he was a saint giving testimony. "I did everything for Luke Merrick," he said solemnly. "Helped him find work, loaned him money, offered a fair contract. And this is my reward. Accused of cruelty." He shook his head, eyes glistening with crocodile tears. "All I want is for these boys to grow up safe." Josh nearly stood, but Hannah reached back and touched his knee lightly. "Don't. Let me." Judge Harper turned to her. "Mrs. Merrick, your turn." Hannah rose. Every eye in the room swung to her. Her voice trembled at first. "Your Honor, I have walked through this town with my boys hungry behind me. I knocked on 23 doors. 23. She held up her fingers. Not one opened. A few people looked down at their boots. I begged for work, food, a corner of a barn, and every time, folks turned away, except one man." She pointed to Josh. "He saved us from drunken men on the road. He gave my children shelter when no one else would. He let us sleep in a barn so cold, he slept outside just to give us space. A ripple went through the room. Briggs shifted. Hannah continued, stronger now. You call him dangerous, violent, but he's the only man in this town who has never raised a hand to hurt anyone weaker than him. A few murmurs, a few nods. Judge Harper listened closely. Briggs's lawyer jumped up. Objection, irrelevant. Harper cut him off. Overruled. Hannah lifted her chin. My husband died working for the railroad. Folks said it was an accident. Folks said he was careless. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. But I've learned the truth. Learned he died because he wouldn't stay quiet about wrongdoing. Gasps. Briggs paled. Rosa stood in the back, arms crossed in silent witness. Muksu Wright clutched his hat, looking ready to break. And this same man sitting across this room, profited from it. Hannah pointed at Briggs. Gasps turned to whispers. Whispers turned to a low rumble. Briggs shot to his feet. That's a damned lie. Harper slammed his gavel. Sit down. Briggs sat, but barely. Hannah turned to her sons. I ain't perfect, but I love my boys. I'd walk barefoot across the prairie for them. I already have, and I will again. Her breath trembled. I'm trying to raise 'em right, but I can't do it while a man like Briggs keeps trying to break us. She sat, tears burning her eyes but not falling. Silence held the room. Then Judge Harper said, The boy, Eli Merrick, wishes to speak. Eli stood on shaky legs. Josh gave him a tiny nod of encouragement. The boy walked to the front, voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Briggs said he'd take care of me, said he'd give me work. But he lied. Briggs's lawyer shot up. He's a child. Sit down, Harper barked. Eli kept going, stronger now. He tried to make me say bad things about Ma. Tried to make me hate Mr. Cole. Tried to make me sign papers saying things that weren't true. He looked straight at the judge. And when I ran, his men hit me, kicked me. One of them was going to shoot me. A gasp tore through the room. And Mr. Cole saved me, Eli whispered. Again. He wiped his eyes. If Ma loses us, I'll never forgive myself. And if we go with Briggs, we'll never come back. He stepped down, breath shaking. Hannah wrapped her arms around him the moment he returned to his seat. Josh's jaw was tight, eyes burning, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. Every word had already been spoken by the child he saved. Judge Harper leaned back, expression unreadable. The court, he said slowly, will recess until afternoon to reach a decision. The gavel came down. Briggs stormed out. The crowd erupted. Hannah collapsed into Josh's steady hand, and the fate of her family hung in the air like dust. The courthouse felt different when they walked back in after recess. Heavier, quieter, like every wall knew the truth was about to pick a side. Judge Harper returned to the bench, spectacles low on his nose, the weight of the whole town on his shoulders. Before I render a decision, he said, I have one question. His gaze slid past Hannah, past Eli, past Briggs. and landed squarely on Josh Cole. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, "I need you to define your relationship to this woman and her children." The entire room shifted. Briggs straightened, confident. Hannah froze, breath trapped between ribs. Eli clutched the edge of the bench. Jonah and Caleb leaned in, wide-eyed. Rosa whispered a prayer under her breath. Even the dust motes seemed to stop moving. Josh stood slowly, tall, steady, unshaken. He removed his hat, held it against his chest, and faced the judge like a man ready to take bullets for the truth. "For months now," he began, voice deep and slow, "I've been trying to keep a line between helping this family and being part of it." He looked at Hannah then, really looked at her, and she felt something warm break open inside her chest. Josh continued, "I thought if I stayed back, I couldn't fail him, couldn't hurt him, couldn't be blamed for their troubles." He shook his head slightly. "But that ain't how family works. Family ain't about blood or color or who owns what land. Family's about standing in front of someone when the world's trying to take 'em." Briggs scoffed loudly. "This is ridiculous." Josh didn't even glance his way. He took one step closer to Hannah and the boys. "I ain't just protecting 'em out of duty," he said. "I'm protecting 'em because I choose 'em, every last one of 'em." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Then he said it. Clear, strong, unshakable. "They're my family, Your Honor." A hush rolled through the room like a cold wind hitting warm earth. Caleb whispered, barely audible, "Pa Josh." The word landed like a stone dropped into still water, rippling through every soul in that courthouse. Hannah covered her mouth. Tears slipped free, but they weren't tears of fear this time. Judge Harper cleared his throat, eyes glinting with something that wasn't entirely professional restraint. "Mr. Briggs," he said, turning cold as iron, "I find no grounds to remove these children from their mother." Briggs surged to his feet. "You can't." "I can," Harper snapped. "And I do." He slammed his gavel. "The petition is denied, and an inquiry into Mr. Briggs's conduct, financial and otherwise, will begin immediately." Gasps, murmurs, a ripple of shock. Briggs staggered back like someone had punched the air out of him. Josh exhaled slowly, shoulders finally lowering. Eli grabbed his hand. Hannah touched his arm with trembling fingers. Judge Harper leaned forward. "This court recognizes the Merrick Cole household as a lawful family unit." Hannah choked on a sob. Josh bowed his head. Eli stood taller. Jonah grinned through tears. Caleb climbed straight into Josh's arms. The gavel came down one final time, and everything changed. The days after the trial felt unreal, like Ash Hollow had suddenly remembered how to breathe after holding its breath too long. Colton Briggs didn't show his face around town. Marshal Harlan rode in 2 days later with a stack of ledgers, witness statements, and a warrant heavier than Briggs's pride. Word spread quick. The generous benefactor of Ash Hollow was being hauled away in irons. Some folks whispered. Some pretended they'd never shaken his hand. A few apologized to Hannah in quiet voices, but she didn't linger in town long. Hidden Creek Ranch was waiting, and so was Josh. Spring crept into the valley slow and gentle. Grass pushed through old frost. The creek ran clearer than it had in months. Hannah found herself standing on the porch one evening, apron still on, staring at the sky turning gold above the ridgeline. The boys were playing in the yard, Jonah swinging a stick like a saber, Caleb chasing a grasshopper, and Eli patching a broken fence slat with the earnest focus of a man twice his age. Josh stepped beside her, wiping sawdust off his hands. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Just feels strange. After all that's happened, feels like this peace is borrowed." Josh's voice softened. "Not borrowed, earned." Hannah looked up at him. The sunset painted him in copper and shadows, broad shoulders, tired eyes, a face that had carried sorrow but refused to surrender to it. She swallowed. "You gave us a home." Josh shook his head. "You built one with me. There's a difference." They stood in the comfortable silence only two people who'd suffered together could share. The next morning, Josh called the boys outside before breakfast. "Need your help with something." They followed him to the front of the property where an unfinished wooden frame stood anchored in the earth. "What is it?" Jonah asked. "Gate," Josh said. "Every ranch needs one." Eli looked at the beams, eyebrows lifting. "You want us to help build it?" Josh smiled. "If you're willin'. A man's ranch ought to have the hands of his family on it." The word hit them all at once. Family. Not whispered, not hinted, spoken plain. Caleb ran to fetch nails. Jonah grabbed the hammer. Eli climbed onto the fence rail to hold a beam steady. They worked for hours, passing tools, laughing, arguing, starting over, trying again. Hannah watched from the porch, her heart swelling in her throat. The sounds, the thud of hammer, the boys' chatter, Josh's low instructions, felt like the rhythm of a life she never thought she'd have. When the last plank was set, Josh stepped back. "All right," he murmured. "Bring it over." Eli carried a carved wooden sign from the wagon. He handed it to Josh, pride glowing in his eyes. Josh held it up for Hannah to see. "Merrick Cole Ranch Family Welcome." Hannah pressed her hand to her mouth. Tears slipped free. Quiet, grateful tears that didn't come from pain this time. Josh approached her slowly, as if giving her space to turn away. She didn't. "It ain't just a name," he said softly. "It's a promise." Hannah looked at the boys, then at Josh, the man who'd dragged her son out of danger, stood between her and the law, carried her shame without flinching, and claimed her in front of a town that once spat on her. She stepped closer. "What happens now?" she whispered. Josh took her hand, rough and warm. "Well," he said, voice low, "I've been thinking about making this family legal in more ways than one, if you'd want that." Hannah let out a shaky breath. "I do want that." Josh nodded once, simple, steady, the way he did everything. The boys whooped loud enough to scare the birds off the fence. The sun dipped low behind the hills as they gathered by the new gate. Jonah leaned against Josh's leg. Eli stood with a pride he'd never worn this openly. Caleb tugged Hannah's sleeve and pointed at the sign. "Ma," he whispered, "we're home now, right?" Hannah knelt, kissed the top of his head, and held him close. "Yes, baby," she said, voice trembling with joy. "We're home, and nobody's ever taken it from us again." Behind them, the ranch glowed warm in the falling light, a place built from pain, rebuilt with love, and claimed by choice. A real home, a chosen family. The Merrick Cole Way. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched something in your heart, perhaps a memory of family, of courage, or of starting over when life felt too heavy, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Please share a comment below. Your reflections mean more than you know. And if you enjoyed this tale, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next Western journey. From my heart to yours, thank you for spending this time with me tonight.